The Northumberland coastline is one of the UK's most iconic locations. With over 30 beaches, a number of castles and largely untouched natural landscape, it is an area the subject of both national pride and tourism. However, that may be about to change with the proposal of the Druridge-based surface mine scheduled to commence in 2018 with the aim to remove 3 million tonnes of coal from a site in Hawthorne. With such a cherished landscape at risk, tensions have been rising between the Banks Mining, who are leading the project, and various environmental protest groups, as well as the local community. Whether the project is beneficial to the area is a subject of great debate, and something which the jury is still out on.
Sustainability of the project is going to be assessed using the 3 pillars, starting with social, then moving on to environmental, and then economical. There are several social impacts of the surface mine. One of the positive impacts is that it will create 100 jobs within the Northumberland area. 50 of these jobs are for the local community, whilst the other 50 jobs are being promised to current employees. Additionally, the project will support another 300 jobs for bank group employees within the northeast. Another positive social outcome of the mine is the community fund that has been set up by the Banks Group for the local residents of Hawthorne in the amount of £450,000. Half of the fund is used for local good causes such as funding for new parks and replacing the windows of the local community centre. The other half of the fund is a skills fund which will be used to help the local community overcome the obstacles they face when trying to gain employment. This is done by giving local residents access to grant funding to support them with their apprenticeships, which also boasts the benefits of increased apprentices in local companies. Furthermore, the bank groups are going to invest in creating 7.9 kilometres worth of footpaths and cycle paths to encourage a healthier lifestyle within the local community. However, not all the social impacts of the surface mine are positive. One of the negative effects of the surface mine is the visual impact that the development of the project has on the local scenery. The development of the mine means locals are subjected to the unpleasant construction site. Additionally, the 2 overburden storage mounds, along with the perimeter soil storage, affects the skyline views. Another negative social impact regarding the development of the mine is the increased road traffic as a result of the materials needed to be brought to site, as well as the employees of the site driving to work every day. The increased road traffic also results in a rise in noise pollution, which is another social negative. A major contributor to the noise pollution from the site will be the machinery being used to extract the coal. The construction on the site will cause increased dust particles in the air, which could have adverse health effects on the local residents. The negative social impacts discussed could result in the decline of the tourism trade in the local area. In addition to this, the project could also result in loss of farmland agricultural jobs due to the use of the land which could be otherwise used for farming. The Banks Group has developed a 4-year restoration plan to increase the net habitat creation and connectivity in the local area. The plan aims to create 100 hectares of new wetlands and grasslands with the goal of delivering a net benefit for the wildlife within Druridge Bay. The restoration also includes plans to plant 10 kilometres of new native species mixed hedgerows and 5,100 trees over a 3.4 hectare area. The Banks Group also agreed to stop the extraction of 422,000 tonnes of sand from the Bay area, which protects 13% of the total Druridge Bay beach and dune system. The group has also pledged to create more wildlife hives and dark skies lookouts. As can be seen in the picture of the open cast mine in Cramington, which was a previous project by the Banks Group, where they converted the extraction site into a piece of art so that the community are not left with an eyesore. However, although the coal mine does boast some positive environmental impacts, it does also have some negative ones. One such negative impact is the expected loss of habitats for animals as a result of the land being used for the operation of the Hawthorne mine. The development of the surface mine will result in an immediate destruction of the local farmland as they will be used for operational purposes. During the extraction of coal, 11 million tonnes of CO2 will be released. This will increase the negative environmental effects of the project as the release of CO2 contributes to global warming. Additionally, there is a slight risk that the ground surface water could be contaminated during the course of the project. The development of the mine will result in the loss of foraging habitats that are used by up to 3,000 pink-footed geese over the winter period. Additionally, farmland breeding birds will temporarily be displaced, with the largest effect being on the skylark, which will have up to 26 territories displaced. Some wintering warders will also be displaced.
Moving on now to the economic positives of the project. As can be expected, a lot of money will be generated, and Banks Group is feeding some of this back into the Northumberland area. In total, they plan to invest £83 million. As Omar said earlier, £450,000 of these are going towards local good causes and supplying people with skills training. Additionally, £13.2 million will be generated in wages over the life of the plant. There are also many economical positives for the Northumberland County Council, who will receive £1.5 million a year in business rates and save £844,000 due to the halting of sand extraction. Furthermore, Banks Group plan on offering financial support to local businesses. The UK economy will also benefit from £6 million in tax contributions and £48 million being generated in supply chain contracts over the life of the site. Finally, this coal mine would allow Northumbria to stop importing coal from countries such as Russia and Colombia. While there are many significant economic positives, there are still economic negatives which affect the locals. The destruction of landscape and loss of wildlife would lead to a large decrease in tourism to the area, losing jobs that rely on tourists. Furthermore, the mine would lead to a loss of farmland, losing jobs and a source of income. Perhaps the largest negative is the decrease in house prices. This would lead to a decrease in locals' capital, making it harder for them to take out loans, thereby hurting small businesses.
Now, Banks Mining have offered a number of incentives in order to swing the opinion of the local community towards a project, the most notable of which being the Highthorn Community Fund, which promises to split £450,000 between community funding such as the development and improvement of community centres, as well as the construction of things such as play parks and other local attractions. The second half of the fund will be put towards a skills fund, which is ultimately intended to facilitate the introduction of more people into work. If we consider that Druridge is suffering from factors such as unemployment, this is a particularly interesting and promising proposition from Banks Mining, as it may provide the necessary boost that the local economy needs. In addition to this, Banks Mining have also proposed the creation of almost 8 kilometres of footpaths and cycle paths. Given that Northumberland is typically associated with its natural attractions, it is easy to see how such a development into promoting the exploration of the landscape would offer a boost to tourism in the local area, as well as improving the quality of life for residents already living there. Finally, as would be expected to accompany a project of this size, it is expected that over 50 new jobs will be generated, as well as the securing of 50 pre-existing jobs. Here we have a summary of the Banks Community Fund, which, separate from the Highthorn Community Fund, offers an injection of support to businesses and organisations in the surrounding area to where Banks Mining set up operation. It can be seen that organisations that live near to the site are eligible for £5,000 worth of funding. This is a clear incentive for local businesses, and such a grant will undoubtedly prove to be yet another boost to the local economy. Now, it is clear to see that Banks' approach to winning over the local community stems largely from an economic basis. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. We frequently see companies that aim more towards a more nice guy people approach, only to the exact opposite in regards to corporate behaviour and action, and leave the surrounding community with nothing more than an empty apology. As can be seen, the Banks proposal offers numerous economic benefits, not just for the local community, but also to the UK economy as a whole. With political shifts such as Brexit rapidly materialising, it is important to accept that such projects are crucial in regards to maintaining a healthy economy within the country, theoretically. The issue lies in corporate responsibility. It is clear to see that Banks Mining talk big when it comes to promises in regards to the local community. The question is whether they will follow through with such propositions once permission for the project has been granted. The use of words such as possibly, could and might can be expected to cause controversy with local sceptics, and little legislation has been proposed to ensure that such promises by the company are legally guaranteed. As an example, initial press reported that the company planned to create a new area of wetland the equivalent of 160 football pitches if the project was to be approved. This is no longer being proposed by Banks Mining ahead of the project and throws shade upon their consistency when it comes to honouring their commitments. Despite this, residents may take some reassurance from the fact that Banks Mining are a North East founded company, and following the opening of the Shotton surface mine, did finance the creation of the £3 million Lady of the North sculpture in Cramlington, generating an estimated £1 million annually to the North East economy.
SUSOP is a tool used to assess the sustainability of a project. Normally, the individual risks and opportunities would be individually assessed and assigned numerical values to allow them to be plotted on a graph, as seen here. However, for our purposes, we've identified risks and opportunities which demonstrate both high impact and high likelihood, which we will now discuss. So the two opportunities which were selected, which were highly likely and highly positive, were the Hawthorne Community Fund and the Banks Group Community Fund. The Hawthorne Community Fund has high positive impacts in both human and social capital, providing both training and community improvements. It is planned to commence as soon as mining commences, and so is very likely. However, in comparison to the vast amounts of money Banks Group will be making, £450,000 is not very much. Secondly, the Banks Group Community Fund has high positive impact as it provides support to community groups, environmental groups, and education. This improves natural, human, and social capital. It is very likely as it's already been carried out in other communities near other bank group sites.
According to our desk study, we have found many potential environmental risks. First of all, there are a variety of habitats, such as woodland, grassland, and sand dune in particular, which is a priority habitat and is of statutory importance. It is reported to have some uncommon plant species, such as bloody cranesbill and burnet rose. Mining at Hawthorne is likely to reduce the quality of habitats and resulting loss of biodiversity. The landscape over the proposed mine are generally flat with very slight slopes, so the visitors can have an extensive view of the wilderness of Northeast. An open cast mining will eliminate these existing features and cause huge visual impact by adding an eyesore to Druridge Bay. The proposed site is away from cities, so people around the area can come here and enjoy the fresh air and a moment of tranquility. But the operation of mining will cause dust, noise, and vibration. Even though in Banks Group's environmental statements they have concluded that the noise measured at the receptors are within acceptable range, it didn't take into account the wildlife living there. Scientists have discovered that the birds' reproductive success may drop because of the change in sound frequency. Another neglected section was the light pollution. Druridge Bay was described to have a particular dark sky with its outlook to the North Sea, while the lighting during operation will ruin this outstanding view in future. Hawthorne Mine is located on a considerably sensitive area. There are a number of designated sites, such as SSSI's Area of Outstanding National Beauty, listed buildings, and ROSMA sites. While the company may argue that none of the mining sites are in the designated areas, if you look it up on the map, you can see that the mining area is within the impact risk zones for both of the SSSIs there, and a few listed buildings are on the margin of mining area. My biggest concern is that one of the mining area, Hemsgårdsburn, is categorized as flood zone 2 and 3, so it's subject to relative high risk of coastal floods. Besides, there are many previous mines areas that haven't been fully restored. Plus, climate change has caused more frequent extreme weathers. If the flood actually happens, the synergized damage with other mines will significantly degrade the quality of habitats. While coal mining can bring financial benefits in short term, there are many economic losses at the meantime. For example, loss of tourism, loss of subsidies from agriculture stewardship, compensation fee to local community, and decreased property value. Furthermore, coal commodity price has been dropping. It is a question whether the Banks Group are going to be able to complete a full restoration to the whole site. And more importantly, once the mining activities been closed, the local economy will collapse and cause mass unemployment. And in long term, who will be able to count and compensate the monetary equivalent to the loss of ecological service at Druridge Bay? Social-wise, Hawthorne Mine is close to Druridge Bay Farm, so during the operation stage, it will have an adverse health impact on farmers, residents, and especially the mine workers. It is confirmed to be a direct cause for respiratory diseases. On the other hand, there has been lots of protest against this mine. People are funding a project called Save Druridge and trying to reverse the planning permission. The non-government organizations such as Natural England, Historic England, and Wildlife Trust hold negative opinions too. They are skeptical about Banks Group's environment statement because some important aspects are missing.
Once again, we carried out a simplified SUSOP and identified the high likelihood, high negative impact risks. These are loss of wildlife and destruction of landscape. The mine would result in the loss of wildlife in the area and would destroy 26 skylark territories and 3 wagtail territories, resulting in them being displaced. This both endangers the animals and results in the loss of one of the area's largest attractions. Should the project be carried out, it is unavoidable as these territories would become a giant hole in the ground. The destruction of landscape would make the area an undesirable place to live, with loss of wetlands and large soil mounds being visible from the beaches. While Banks Group plan on restoring the area, this won't be for a long time. Therefore, this has a high negative impact and is highly likely.
Okay, let's talk about the stakeholders. The main stakeholders in the Druridge Bay open cast mining project are the investors and shareholders, employees, government, tourists, consumers, universities, design experts, media, non-government organizations, and neighbors. Here are some top concerns and proposed solutions for each stakeholder. For example, the investors and the shareholders. They focus more on the profits of an enterprise, and it can be improved by advancing the technology to reduce the running cost and make the products more competitive in the market with lower price but better quality to obtain more market share. As for stakeholders' engagement, we need to stake the code of ethics, take the responsibilities, and handle the crisis better. Furthermore, we believe as long as we treasure stakeholders' value and through effective and straightforward communication, we can rebuild the trust with them. Basically, the Banks Group has a relatively good reputation since it has 40 years history and over 400 members of staff, and it gives great support to the community groups and organizations. At the same time, the Banks Group also engaged in renewable energy application. And this project also draws strong objections, and then many came from the non-government organizations like Friend of Earth and Northumberland Wildlife Trust. These organizations concern about the greenhouse gas release, water pollution, and wildlife habitat destruction. For those concerns, the spokesman from Banks Group also gave corresponding responses. The operation period of this plant only until 2024, and it perfectly meets the announcement of UK government on cutting greenhouse gas emission by 2025. At the same time, new area of wetland is created as wildlife habitats. Besides, coal will still remain an important part of UK's energy mix, which contributes 25% of total electrical production. Around 85% of that coal was relied on import from overseas.
In conclusion, the project is not sustainable due to the huge negative impact it would have on the landscape and wildlife. However, should the project continue as planned, some goals should be set to ensure as little damage as possible is being done. Firstly, new habitats for the local bird life should be made to ensure they have a place to live once displaced. Secondly, it should be ensured that the money promised is being received and that locals are being trained and employed. And finally, once the project is complete, the restoration of the site should be closely monitored to ensure it's being carried out as promised.